from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.tv. Thank you for joining me this evening. We're going to dive into news. We have a small hiatus here, and we'll get into some of what I've yet to cover on the broadcast that's happened in the past, week. Dealing with the inquiry about is there any Trump relation to Russia, dealing with Mueller, and also some of the leaks going on with that. Also going to kind of dive into the economy here a little bit, because I think there's opportunity out there in this, the way our economy is shifting and everything, where technology is also coming into play in that, the internet and all that. I really kind of want to get into that because I still see a lot of opportunity. It's something that you're going to have to navigate because it's a whole new era. It's something that's changing rapidly, and a lot of the people that did things the same for 30, 40 years are literally, they changed something, and 2 years later what that little change they made is irrelevant, and now they're struggling to figure out what they aren't doing right. So we'll kind of get into that. Sorry, I'm trying to pull all kinds of stuff up right now. And even when it comes to mainstream media, we'll kind of get into how them, like the big retail stores, they're both fighting basically the same battle. We'll kind of cover the baseball shooting thing a little bit. I really don't want to get into that too much because there's not a whole lot there. But we will get into that. I had a Ron Paul Liberty report I really, really wanted to get into. And this had to do with the Global Peace Index. And it basically covers the least peaceful countries and most peaceful countries. And it's pretty interesting where the U.S. ranked in this. And I'll go ahead and cue that up here, and we'll play that. I really want to get into that to start off the broadcast. Pretty interesting information, but let's go ahead and dive into that.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams. And Daniel, good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
Well, very good. We're going to be talking about foreign policy, believe it or not, today. Wow. We're going to talk about a peace index. And also, we're going to hear something from the Senator Rand Paul, because the vote is coming up today. And he was on the floor this morning, on the Senate floor. And I think we have a little clip here on Rand's arguing his case why we should stop the
Today we will discuss the involvement of the United States in the Middle East, and we will also discuss whether we should engage in a new war in Yemen. Today we will discuss an arms sale to Saudi Arabia that threatens the lives of millions of Yemenis. But we will discuss something even more important than an arms sale. We will discuss whether we should be actively involved. Should the United States be actively involved with refueling the Saudi planes, with picking targets, with having advisors on the ground? Should we be at war in Yemen?
You know, the time Rand was on the program a couple of weeks ago, this subject came up because this was a big issue. And he talked about having come up previously and not doing all that well on the vote, but still doing good in the sense that there was one that came up a year or so ago, and he brought it up and didn't get a tremendous amount of support and votes. And yet Obama then backed off a bit. So the public relations, the public issue is pretty important. So right now, though, there may be a chance that he's going to do a lot better on getting the votes. Not necessarily for the most noble reason that they've all come our way. But, you know, in politics, you take your votes where you get them. But right now, it looks like a bunch of Democrats going to come over. And there are some good Republicans that will support him for this. So it's interesting to see because they've had the debate. What we just reviewed here was this morning. The debate was going on, but the vote will be this afternoon. So people still have time to call their senator.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is, I mean, I think you make a great point. People say, oh, you know, you can't get the votes. But you're right. They lost last time, but they won because I think President Obama saw the numbers and said, you know, this is too much. But you know, today the resolution of disapproval for President Trump's announced arms sales to Saudi Arabia. And in the clip we just watched, Senator Paul says, you know, why are we going to be complicit in this war on Yemen? All these people are dying. The Saudis are in this war. Should we be picking targets? Should we be giving them the weapons to do it? And I think it's a good point, and I think hopefully this will pass or get close to it.
You know, Israel's an interesting player in this, too, because Israel gets along very well with Saudi Arabia, but they're not making a lot of noise about this. They're not saying, send more weapons to Saudis because who knows what the future may bring. But they're not really entering into this. But, you know, Schumer, who's not exactly in opposition to anything Israel does. He came out and supported this resolution. But there's politics involved. You know, if they can embarrass the president, they would. But we're not in the business of embarrassing people as much as calling attention to people of what's going on and why are we selling all these weapons and pretense about supporting the country that we see as one of the worst, if not one of the worst violators of civil liberties in their country, and then we still give them more money. So I think there's a lot of symbolism here, but there's a lot of reality here. And then you throw in the other factor of who really is going to benefit, and those people who get to sell the weapons. And even Trump, when he presented this after, I think even while he was still in Saudi Arabia, he says, you're going to get a good deal, you know, and I'm talking about he has influence with these business people. So everybody knows that's what it's about. But it is no excuse. So it'll be an interesting vote this afternoon.
And I remember early on, I learned when I came to work for you, the logic of saying the U.S. shouldn't really sell its weapons to any country, regardless of whether they're even allies, because it's really kind of a socialization of costs and a privatization of profits.
That's right. And so much of it is good technology. I imagine there is, you probably, from our viewpoint, you probably can't ban ban a knife, or maybe a gun that almost anybody could make. But when it comes to high technology, where they have spent billions of dollars and F-35s and all this, why should this technology ever be sold to another country and do it indiscriminately as long as somebody's going to make a buck? So it is a big issue. It's going on, but maybe some good news will come today. It'd be nice to see this vote win and put the pressure on the president. But, there was another thing that came up today under one of our favorite sites, Zero Hedge, and they had a report on the global peace index. And that sounds good. I hope we did well, but I was disappointed. we didn't do all that well. They measure the defense of peace in 164 countries, and we were down. We were down to 114 or 114th on that list. So we're the lower the number, the better. So we're not in the top 10. But they did list, an interesting point. They listed the bottom 10. And the factor that seemed to be prevalent in these, of the 10 people who were less people, 9 of them were countries that we were involved in regime change and bombing and killing and all this stuff. So they're less peaceful, because we've interfered. A lot of people wouldn't admit that, but of course I do now. And we worry a lot about blowback. I don't consider this whole thing blowback, but this has unintended consequences. There is less peace, when we throw ourselves around and get involved. And hardly would this be a demonstration that our foreign policy is healthy toward peace. And yet they use that argument all the time. We have to go there, defend our Constitution, promote peace, and all this stuff, which is pure propaganda.
And we do have the clip that we can show the map of these countries. It's the 10 least peaceful countries are on the right. And as you said, Dr. Paul, of those 10, 9 of them have one thing in common, which is that the U.S. has intervened on the pretext of helping them be more peaceful. It turns out it's had the opposite of effect. Every country except the Central African Republic are countries that we've tried to save, including Yemen, which we opened the show talking about, our alliance with the Saudis, who've been at war in Yemen since 2015. But you remember the rhetoric, first on Iraq. First it was the WMDs scaring people, but then to get some of the liberals on board, we're going to give them human rights and we're going to make it such a peaceful country. And here it is, yet again, Syria, Afghanistan, all places we've done regime change. And the result has been in Somalia, 1990s on. We started there in the 1990s. Our dictator was overthrown. We kept intervening, and it's still one of the least peaceful countries on earth.
That's right. So hardly can anybody justify more of our foreign policy on the basis of peace. But, another scary part of this survey, this index, is that they don't measure anything that people do outside their own country. So this did not reflect any of our policy or killing and violence in all these countries. This was domestic. This was, our streets, the safety and peace and civil liberties, and they have the index that they worked up. And if they considered everything that we have done overseas and measure that as a move toward or away from peace, we could be very well at the bottom. And of course, the opposition would say, oh, no, we're promoting peace. We promote democracy. And this is why we're there. We are the policemen. We are the good people. So that would be very, very unfair. But when you look at the details, if anybody's honest with themselves, they'd have to realize that what we're doing is not promoting peace, because the more we do, the less peace there is. And the more we have to spend on saying that, we're providing peaceful conditions around the world.
And, one of those I wouldn't mind mentioning just for a second, South Sudan, I think is a very important one because And we saw it in Libya as well, but it's what I would call the weaponization of human rights. You remember in the 2000s, this big Save Darfur campaign, and especially a lot of the celebrities and people like that, a lot of people on the left, they got on board this humanitarian thing to split Sudan in half because South Sudan was under the thumb of the evil the evil government in Khartoum. So for human rights reasons, they had to split it. Well, the real reason, we've discussed it on the show too, was that all the oil is in the south, and that Sudan as a whole had signed a deal with China to help exploit those oil fields. So as soon as we split it up, the U.S. tried to go in. But look about the conditions now in South Sudan. As soon as they split, a civil war erupted, thousands and thousands of people killed. Where's Save Darfur now? Nobody cares about it. So it was not about human rights. It was about business interests, PR interests, and splitting the country up. And I think this happens in so many cases. People believe the propaganda. They don't try to look through it, whether it's war propaganda or peace propaganda. The results is the same.
Now, if the argument holds up, which I believe we can defend this argument, that more we're involved over there, the worse the conditions get, instead of better. But the justification for us being over there is terrorism. The terrorists are coming. But the statistics don't bear this out. If this is part of the problem is our foreign policy, there was one statistic between 1990 and 2015 that is estimated, and it's hard to count them all because there's so many. They believe that our policies and our bombs and our drones and our wars have killed and led to the killing of 4 million Muslims. And that they can't be good. And they say, well, they were all terrorists. They were jihadists, and they weren't civilians. But we do know that there's a lot of civilians and children. And when I think of the justification given by Madeleine Albright, which we frequently mention, that she just blew it off, that 500,000 children died because of our bombing and our policy in Iraq. And she said, well, that's the price you have to pay. You have to pay the price. And you can see why people would become more militant. And then our responses, it's way out of proportion when you look at trying, Trump's big on this. We're going to stop him. We're not going to allow him to come in here, and we're going to ban travel. In the countries that he's banning, nobody's ever come from one of those countries. Most of the people have committed domestic terrorism against us. The large number were born here, or got here legally. It has nothing to do, with illegal immigration, or does it have anything to do with the fact that they come here just to kill us? That isn't the case. It's much bigger than that. Not that there isn't some truth to what they say about why people are radical and why it's evil and vicious to kill innocent people on purpose, why it might not be related to some religious beliefs. That's all true. But I see that as a secondary, as a symptom of a policy that incites people. I think the perfect example of that would be us putting in Mossadegh in Iran, and having that, smoldering there for decades until they take up the hostages, and there's this American Iranian, arguments going on again. So it lasts for a long time, but I think there's a lot of misinformation that we have a policy, we do these things. These countries become less peaceful, and unfortunately, we become less peaceful too, because I think that our ranking dropped more than anybody else did, this particular year. And somebody said, well, it's still 114. Oh, that's horrible. I'd like to be in the top 10 is what I would like. Our goal should be in the top of the list for promoting peace and prosperity, because that's what we should be involved in. But that's not likely to happen unless we decide that the neocons shouldn't be promoting our they shouldn't be promoting our foreign policy. I think there should be different motivations.
Exactly. You mentioned earlier, all of these people can't be terrorists that are killed, and I've seen it elsewhere. But I'm in the middle of watching this film that I recommend, National Bird. It's about our drone program and really the harm it does to the psyche of these people, even though they're not in the battlefield. But one of the statistics that the film pointed out, and I've seen it elsewhere, is 9 times out of 10, the person killed is not the target. So only one person out of every 10 persons that killed was the target of the strike. He may be in a car with his family, with his cohorts, what have you, and they're all wiped out. So that's not a very good statistic when you're concerned about whether you're going to start radicalizing people, where you're going to have blowback, or what else.
I think the hardest position for us to defend, and actually we're not defending it as much, but it's good PR for the opposition, and that is if a individual decides to kill himself and they want to make a point and they throw in some religion, and then they purposely attack innocent people. They go into a place where just kids are there and shoot up and try to kill as many as possible, which happened recently. But are they less dead? When we the mistakes that you just mentioned, that wedding parties and different people just get blown up and killed. I mean, we do that in the name of goodness because we're the good guys. We are sending these drones over there, and we're the exceptional nation, and we're doing it for their best interest. We want them to live like we do. We want them to have these democratic elections. And I would say that is a big source of resentment and a big source of why this violence is going to continue unless we take a step back and say, does our survival and our peace and prosperity depend in any way whatsoever to have any troops in the Middle East? What answer could they give you? They could come up with, it's all about oil. It's all about getting people to join the modern society. We need to teach those Afghan people. I mean, they are still living in the dark ages, but they're not marching over here. The Iranians aren't marching over here, but they're involved in countries that are becoming less peaceful every day almost, and it just happens to be that's where we're involved. In the civil strife and involved in regime change.
So I guess to boil it down, it's very simple. I mean, the statistics don't lie. Here you have it. Interventionism does not produce stable, free, peaceful democracies. U.S. interventionism overseas produces violence, death, and destruction. So we should stop doing it.
That's very good. And it is disappointing to find out that we're low on the list of being a peaceful nation, and they don't even count what we do overseas. That puts us in a bad light. And it's doing a great deal of harm to our liberties as well. Under wartime conditions, people say, there's great danger that there's so many terrorists. And yet, if you compare it to other dangers, it's so minuscule. Of course, somebody will say, you don't care about terrorists coming. Of course we do. We care. We don't want anything, and that's what we're arguing for, even the bit that we have. But we're not talking about those 12 or 15, I think it's 12 in the last 15 years of significant terrorist attack here. We're talking about the constant attacks overseas, the constant bombing, and currently, spreading weapons. This very day, we were talking about why should we $110 billion worth of weapons being sold to Saudi Arabia in the midst of war, and we're allies with them, and again, a war in Yemen. I mean, it makes no sense. So we need to come to our senses and say, non-intervention may be a good answer for our problems, may be a good answer for the world. And I, of course, believe that very sincerely. And that's why I also believe in smaller governments and not having empires to try to dictate to other people. If we did that, I think we would take a significant step in the right direction toward peace and prosperity. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.
Ron Paul Liberty Report, RonPaulLibertyReport.com, Ron Paul Liberty Report on YouTube. Check them out, subscribe. And, we might be on the peace side of that global peace index. We rank globally a lot more peaceful than the countries we destabilized. And when you look at where most of those countries were and where they are now, everything we promised to bring to that country, or at least claim that this is why we need to go in there, has been flipped on its head. Because we destabilized the country. And, you know, again, like Ron Paul said, you can sit there and blame it on we went in for oil, all these issues. But we went in there and destabilized it. And what a lot of people don't ever, look at too is there's a lot of people that believe they can go into this country and be able to, whether it be set up some puppet government or actually bring, peace and stabilization and freedom to people. This is the difference between theory and reality. And even when we look at, when we're looking at politics and, policies, and when we look at all this, it's part of why I'm, I lean libertarian philosophy. Because I do have an understanding, how things, you would expect them to go and how they actually go. Because people are individuals. And, one way that can be proven in, today's society is you can take a group of people. They listen to the same music. They like going, to the same type of clubs. They use the same slang. They dress the same. And when you start asking them really specific questions on what they personally believe, there will be a lot of similar answers. And those will be things that are currently in the media cycle, in the celebrity talking about cycle. But then when you get onto issues that aren't really being, brought up in today's, society, that's when you start seeing the independent thought. When they're not being spoon-fed what they should believe, they actually start, independently thinking about issues. So when you look at that, you understand that they're still individual people. Therefore, you're also going to have people act different in certain circumstances, even though you're going, well, these group of people do basically all the same things. I expected this outcome. I got this outcome. And, that even plays into stress levels. Someone might be already stressed out. They're already at a breaking point. You might have our people that they're having fun doing stuff, all this political, just like the whole election cycle with Bernie Sanders, you had people that were mad and you had people that, this is fun. You're going to have different results. And, that even plays into this whole, GOP baseball shooting. It turned out to be, Bernie Sanders supporter. That's not saying, oh, see, that's why, all these crazy Bernie support. No, not all of them are crazy. Some of them just they're fed up. They really don't understand ideology. They're just going, his plan sounds like it'll make my life easier. They don't look at long term, what'll actually happen. They really don't look at, outcomes of policies and historical measurements. And a lot of them they really wanted something, more positive. Same with, there's a lot of Trump supporters, same way. It kind of aggravates me anymore. The direction society has gone when it comes to knowledge. Knowledge is two different things between me and a lot of people in society. Knowledge for them is they can tell you, how to wear clothes or, how to say words or how to abbreviate and text, and they can tell you who's leading in baseball, basketball, football, soccer, MMA, boxing, hockey. But you couldn't ask about, philosophy. You couldn't ask about, I hate to say this, but I run into, quite a few people. You can't ask them about, help you figure out, this math problem. Give them, hey, I need you to, figure this out. Well, yeah, I don't know how to do that. We just do the math. Huh? And it gets aggravating to see it because it's almost like I'm watching society turn into the movie Idiocracy. And you almost got to wonder, how much is technology playing into that? I think technology is great. Again, I think there is a difference between how you use technology. I try to use technology as a tool. Just like when I go work on a car or, I do any woodworking. I use tools, but I'm doing the work. I'm doing the math. I'm putting in the brain, exercise. I'm using the tools. I'm not letting the tools do the work. And then we do got a lot of people that, everything is seen through their smartphone. Reality is within their smartphone. It's not a tool. It's their virtual reality. Everything they do, every step they take is documented. And I'm not talking documented in the sense that, it's tracking them. No, they post it. They post every feeling they have. They post everywhere they go. Shoot, they post just sitting at the house, bored. Think I'm going to go out and mow the lawn. Sitting down for a lunch. Like, okay. Interesting. What what do you, should I like that comment? Should I comment, what are you having? Like, how do you interact with that? Because that became, part of their life. And then they wonder why their relationship falls apart. Well, maybe because that guy felt that everything he does is broadcasted to the world, and maybe he doesn't, appreciate that. And that, taking it that you probably talk to Facebook more than you do to him about the issues. And so it almost seems that through all of this, it really makes it easier for us to get involved in all these conflicts. And, I really expected, after Obama's gone, before Obama, under Bush, anti-war left out. They were out and just raising a stink. And you had it from both sides. You had the a lot of Ron Paul people that were anti-war. You had the anti-war left out. Obama gets some power. Continues meddling in the Middle East. Moves troops around to make it look like he's doing something. And anti-war left disappears. Some of the Ron Paul supporters kind of just fell off. A lot of Ron Paul supporters, though, people that were, more into the actual message than just, the political campaign, they kept calling that out. We're still involved in the Middle East now. We're getting involved in, Libya, a lot of libertarians, but anti-war left was, again, they were gone. I figured when Trump got into office and we continue dealing with the Middle East, it looks like, this bill that he talked about, which I got another clip here I'll play, of Rand Paul talking about the Saudi Arabian deal. It looks like the Congress might come out and support, what Rand is proposing, but and basically not going along with the Saudi deal, arms deal. But the anti-war left movement still hasn't been activated. It's almost like they're focused on anti-Russia. Trump's in with Russia, not even dealing with, Clinton's being involved in Russia. Come on. One thing Trump said that's, true. You got to look at all the connections that, there's a lot of connections there. Part of, trying to restart the relations with Russia, we're trying to get some more business flowing here. That kind of, I believe, probably fell in part to siding with EU, the possible, shut off of any movement of oil into Syria, and it's a whole mess over there. Why we're sitting here going, hey, we're not, what the hell are you doing? But the anti-war left really is not activated, and I was really surprised. I thought, the moment he does anything, siding with anybody over in the Middle East, it's over. They're going to come out and, end the war. not happening. And again, that goes back to, what are people even focused on anymore? Real issues or just protesting to protest? Give us your order, what we need to protest, we'll go protest. So there's really more emotion rather than any substance. I want to, again, I had this clip here, and this was Rand Paul, and this is on blocking indefinite detention and Saudi arms cells.
Could be in the White House. Could someone be there that would actually take away all of our rights and begin arresting us for who we are, what we think, what we read? And so I consider this to be one of the most important pieces of legislation that we'll put forward.
While all of Washington, D.C. is captivated by the testimony of former FBI Director James Comey, Senator Rand Paul, who calls the Trump-Russia investigation a distraction away from more important issues, is busy working on some of those issues having to do with civil libertarian concerns on criminal justice and surveillance. This week, he's introducing a new piece of legislation that would bar the federal government from holding U.S. citizens indefinitely without a trial. We're here at the Russell Senate Office Building today. We're going to talk to him about that and more.
Well, we're excited this week to be introducing a law or a potential law, legislation that would stop the government from indefinitely detaining someone. This came about because, well, really, there's a long history. We detained the Japanese without trial, which was a form of indefinite detention back during World War II. Unfortunately, some of the courts even upheld this. And then back in the 70s, we passed, actually back in the 50s, and then again modified in the 70s, another act called the McCarran Act was passed to try to limit the president and say, hey, the president shouldn't be allowed to detain people like the Japanese or any other group of people without any kind of trial. However, they left a loophole. They said the president can't do it unless Congress wants to do it. And so along comes another law a few years ago, 2011, the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA. And in it, it had language that said, because we're so fearful of being attacked by terrorists, we're going to set up this provision where we could hold people without a trial. So it's not only not a speedy trial, as the Sixth Amendment says we should have, it's no trial at all. Basically, you're just held indefinitely. Now, they say, we'll give them a habeas hearing, which means sort of a habeas corpus, present the body. You got to say, bring them forward and tell them what they're accused of. But as I always remind my colleagues, that's the beginning of jurisprudence. That's not the end. Present the body and say what they're accused of is the start of what you're supposed to be guaranteed. You're supposed to have a lawyer, a day in court, a public trial, a judge, the ability to confront your accusers, et cetera, et cetera. But in 2011, they passed this authorization out of such great fear of terrorism. They said, no, we just got to be able to do this. And my response to them at the time was, do you mean an American citizen? Does that mean an American citizen could be arrested and sent to Guantanamo Bay forever without a trial? And the response from Senator McCain was, yeah, if they're dangerous. And my response to him was, it sort of begs the question, who gets to decide who's dangerous and who's not? And I think most people who have looked at our legal history and jurisprudence in general would say, one of the great protections against arbitrary power is the ability to have a trial to defend yourself if you're accused of something. So I consider this to be one of the most important issues of individual rights probably that's confronted us in recent times. And it didn't start with this issue. I think it started with Korematsu and maybe even a longer history than that. But I think most people remember the Japanese internment. Out of that fear and out of World War II, they passed more acts saying, gosh, we're just going to be able to, maybe we should limit this a little bit. But I think we're at the point where we need more. So our legislation would say that neither the president or Congress can indefinitely detain someone without a trial, without the protections of the Constitution. And I think this is an important thing for us to bring up. We've had a couple of votes on it. About 2 or 3 years ago, we had a vote in the Senate, and it actually passed with 67 votes. But if you watch Washington, the main thing to know about Washington is it's not always what it appears. It went to the conference committee. So if the Senate has one version, the House has another version, it goes to conference committee, and mysteriously it disappeared. Even though we were able to get 67 votes not to detain American citizens, to guarantee that you have a trial, it was stripped out. And I'll never forget President Obama's response. He signed the legislation. And, he ran with some sort of intent of saying he was for civil liberties. And some of the things he said when he ran, I think I admired. But then he signed it, and he said, well, not to worry. You can trust me. I will never use it. And kind of remind me of Madison's admonition. He said, that you can't rely on government to be comprised of angels, basically. The rules, the chains of the Constitution are to make sure nobody can have so much power. And it really isn't about you. It's about the next guy or the next woman who could be worse and more authoritarian. So I consider this to be very, very important because you never know who's next. You never know who could be in the White House. Could someone be there that would actually take away all of our rights and begin arresting us for who we are, what we think, what we read. And so I consider this to be one of the most important pieces of legislation that we'll put forward. And it's to prevent indefinite detention without a trial.
How would you assess the kind of the political climate for that right now? I'm thinking of Theresa May a couple of days ago said that, we should probably trade civil liberties to be more safe in the wake of terrorism. I think the current administration here shares some kind of feelings with Theresa May. Do you feel like you're in a better place? We are in a better place to react to terrorism this way and to be cognizant of constitutional liberties in 2017 than we were in 2013.
I think your point is well made that the fear of terrorism grows with each attack, and there's always people wanting to trade their liberty for security. And so I'm not saying it's necessarily better than it was a couple of years ago. It may be worse. I do think, though, that some of the things on surveillance in general may be leaning our way because some of the surveillance may have been used by the previous administration for political purposes on the current administration. That may well help us in maybe trying to reform things like FISA and the 702, the backdoor searches where all Americans' records or many Americans' records can be looked at without a warrant. There may be some benefit because of sort of the partisan squabbling over that. On this particular issue, I think there always are people that feel, they say, gosh, we've got to be safe. But then when you kind of remind them, we are talking about something fairly important here. And you remind them of what happened to the Japanese. What happened to the Japanese is a powerful historical story that still attaches. And you talk to people in California and the representatives from California, it's a very, very strong sort of pull. I think the current Senator Feinstein, I think, was old enough to actually remember some of that as a child. And do we have the momentum to be able to do it? I don't know. I think it's so important that whether we can win or not, it's worth discussing. And it's worth trying to bring up to get those who are concerned with civil liberties, to get them motivated to call, write, get online, write stories about it. Because even though it's not been used, it's an incredibly dangerous power to allow the government to have the power to indefinitely detain you without a trial.
On the surveillance thing in the current political climate, did you see Lindsey Graham's quote from, I think, 2 days ago that he's now suddenly interested about 702 in a way that he hadn't been before?
I agree. And I've talked to other people on the intelligence committees, and typically those who are on the intelligence committees are rubber stampers of the intelligence community. They're not at all skeptical of power, other than a few exceptions. So I think the fact that we have Lindsey Graham now saying that, he might consider that you have to get a warrant to look at information of Americans. And that's the idea that's floating around. It's a very simple one. Any database that has Americans in, if you want to type an American's name in, get a warrant. And a lot of people say, how could we ever catch terrorists? You need to realize that even when you have to get a warrant, most warrants are issued. Think of in D.C. tonight, if there's somebody that is inside their house, but their neighbor says they went in 4 hours ago and someone says they think they saw them raping someone down the street. How often do you think a judge says no to a warrant? Almost never. So, judges are fairly compliant, and we kind of want them to, but we still want it to be separated such that there's someone who isn't in the pursuit of the chase, doesn't know the people involved, doesn't know the color of their skin, their race, anything about them. You want an objective individual, to make those decisions. And then the Sixth Amendment talks about, speedy trial, right to trial, et cetera. The interesting thing about the Sixth Amendment, and this is something we've gotten quite involved with as well, is the story of Khalif Browder really shook me. He was a young 16-year-old that was accused of stealing a knapsack and spent 3 years in Rikers Island, 2 years in solitary confinement. And every time I think about it, I'm horrified. 2 years in solitary confinement with no trial. So the Sixth Amendment says you get a speedy trial. We're working on that issue from a couple of angles. One is that bail, and I've started talking with Senator Harris, Kamala Harris from California, about this. He had a $3,000 bail. So a lot of people can afford a $3,000 bail. In fact, many people will say, well, I'm not leaving my kid in jail with $3,000. But what if you have no money? Absolutely no money. Bail is supposed to be about your risk of fleeing, but it's also supposed to be individualized. It's different for a billionaire than it is for somebody that's a greeter at Walmart. There's a difference in circumstances about what is the deterrence to flight. But for him, it was permanent incarceration. He was beaten and all kinds of things happened to him. He tried to kill himself in prison, and it must have been a horrific experience, and then ultimately he did commit suicide. But that's a big part. That's not a speedy trial. In fact, really, if there ought to be any trial, it ought to be over somebody who kept him in prison for 3 years without a trial, because that's absolutely an injustice. I think there's very little of this Attorney General, this Department of Justice doing anything favorable towards criminal justice or towards civil liberties. Why did I vote for him? Politics is funny, and I think a lot of people out there, because I've seen some of the criticism, they tend to sort of discount the things that we are for and do in legislation and think that it's much more important who you supported in a particular primary or how you voted on a particular nomination, as opposed to, the dozens and dozens of fights that we fight every day for individual liberty. And I think we pick and choose sort of which fights we're going to really expend our effort on. So, for example, I expended a lot of effort, and in fact, I think I did have some impact in blocking John Bolton and Elliot Abrams from being at the State Department. Those I thought I had a chance with. And we did. We did everything possible. And I did probably 3 dozen television interviews saying they were unacceptable and that they didn't agree with President Trump's, belief in less regime change and less intervention. And we had effect. If we'd have tried to do the same on Sessions, I don't think we would have been effective. I don't think it would have worked. And I think any replacement would have been somebody sort of equally from the same school. And so we didn't feel like we could win. We also felt like any replacement would be from the same perspective or worse. And I think it also plays into the fact, and this is something that's hard for people outside to see, is that when you're with people every day, that you have lunch with every day, there's a certain personal rapport and belief in the individual that may not translate to the, to all of their positions as well.
And although the law required no reason at all to fire an FBI director, the administration then chose to defame me and, more importantly, the FBI.
Comey's testifying right now. We'd be remiss not to ask you about it. Tie it even back to your work on civil libertarian stuff. How does this scandal, his testimony, affect the climate for dealing with surveillance issues and things like that from your...
I don't know how much effect it's going to have on other things. I think that right now the distraction of all things Russia and all things Trump-Russia is distracting us from everything right now. And I think it has been overplayed. I mean, sounds like, and you can just imagine this, if you watch the president, he's sitting there with Comey and he's saying, am I a target? And he says, no, Mr. President, you're not a target. Tell the public then. Why won't you tell the public? You can see him browbeating him and saying, I want the public to know because it's distracting from my agenda. And you do kind of wonder if he really isn't a target, why they wouldn't say that publicly. And you can go into all the debate over whether or not he was bringing undue pressure on him. But the bottom line is as Comey testified today, nobody told me not to investigate this stuff. Anybody else for a last follow-up?
So why are we selling arms to the Saudis? Can we stop this?
Next week, we'll have legislation on that as well. And the legislation from the 70s, the Arms Export Act, allows one senator to demand a vote. And so I will demand a vote on that. Senator Murphy is my ally in this. We have a bipartisan. I think we have a decent chance at having a very good showing in the vote and possibly even in winning the vote. It's a vote of disapproval, and it would say to the administration they can't sell the arms. Now, unfortunately, like every other bill, it has to be signed by the president, so the president could veto it and still do it. But winning a battle like this would send a huge message out there. And I've been making the point, because, we're also talking about sanctions against Iran, that if you don't want Iran to develop ballistic missiles, maybe we shouldn't be giving more weapons to the Saudis, because the Iranians then say, well, the Saudis now have more, we need more. And there really is an arms race. Every time Israel gets more or the Saudis get more, the Iranians want more, and vice versa. And it goes back and forth and back and forth. And I also think the Saudis are contributing to a humanitarian disaster. There's 18 million people living at starvation levels in Yemen, and it's just horrific to read the stories of what's going on in Yemen now. And the Saudis are stoking it. They used our bombs to bomb a funeral procession about 6 months ago, 150 dead and 500 wounded. And we think, well, gosh, is there going to be an end to terrorism from that? No, maybe 10,000 more people want to blow themselves up after seeing this horrific civilian death. But anyway, I appreciate the time today. It was a great interview.
While work on the indefinite detention bill is just beginning, a vote on the Saudi arms deal could come as soon as next week. For Reason, I'm Matt Welch.
Check out Reason.com, and that was from Reason TV on YouTube. Check them out, subscribe, check out all their other videos. They got a lot of great interviews. Now with the whole Saudi thing and Yemen thing, you're talking about a problem that has been going on for a while, but it's always stoked even more and more when you do have Saudi Arabia just really just bombing whoever and whatever and whenever. This becomes something that, you know, they're fulfilling that type of a prophecy where, hey, look, there's terrorism. Oh, there's some small group of crazies. Yeah, it's terrorism. Bomb that country. And then, of course, they do. And then now people are mad because, well, they didn't really bomb terrorists. They bombed the country. And we're dealing with the same issue. Europe's dealing with the same issue. We tend to be dealing in different, you know, ways. Europe is taking, you know, a lot of immigrants in, knowing that ISIS had come out and said, hey, you know, we're going to use the immigration thing and we're going to get our people in there. And then we will rain terror down on Europe. And, you know, that's basically not word for word, but basically what these terrorists said they were going to do. And now Europe's dealing from it because Europe want to be so inclusive. And it's really dangerous to be inclusive with the countries that you're raining terror. You might not think it's terror. You might think it's fighting terrorism. But for the people that they were in a, you know, at least halfway stable, you know, environment, whether it be Libya, Iraq, Syria, and now they have no home. The father can't feed the kids. Can't protect the wife. Can't protect his family. And now you literally have a whole bunch of angry people running around raining terror because their life has basically been destroyed. And, you know, there's a lot of people out there, even experts, so-called experts, that go, you know, that's why we got to let them in. We got to show them how great our country is. Well, that might work for some people. They might come in and go, oh, you know, well, no, I'm allowed to open a business. But you also have other people that lost their whole family. You have people that their ideology and their religion, their belief in their view of their religion in a radical belief in their religion won't allow them to look at it that way. You also might have people that come in that go, that's what you did to my home, while you get to live like this. And they never get past that part. So that was a, good intentions or not, that's something that should have been known, should have been explained. But of course, they're not going to tell you that. They're not going to tell you that this is going to possibly increase terrorist attack on their own soil. But we need to steadfast through it. Because what society is going to go, oh yeah, bring that here. We want some of that. Hey, our little town wants some terrorism over here. Bring some of that over here. No, they have to sell it is look at the people that truly do want a good life and are trying to find, they want to immigrate here. They might have a little bit of like, kind of rather my country to become as successful and not become, rubble or terrorist haven. Because that plays into, our humanity. Because you want the kid to have a, place where he can be safer. But you got to look at the bigger picture too. Not done right, you end up creating even more of a divide within that country that the immigrants have come to. And that's what starts inspiring that hate crime. And we know a lot of countries they don't have a proper screening process. And it's really hard when you have that many immigrants. They would have to devote a lot of manpower to it. A lot of manpower. And electronic power. And I don't think really many countries have that capability. We'll see where all that goes. We'll see if how much support this bill gets, and then even if it gets through, will the president sign it? All that we're going to have to just wait on. Okay. What's going on here? Sorry, guys. What's going on here? And of course, that's the recover webpage. Takes all these ads on all these websites. If you've noticed, a lot of websites are putting up a lot of ads trying to cover operating costs. Kind of getting a little bit too much for the browser to handle multiple pages, ads constantly reloading. Okay. Get everything back up here. Looks like it's taking off. Okay, here we go. Now, many of you, have looked in and kind of followed Bilderberger Group and Bohemian Grove, and you really should. A lot of people go, oh, that's for conspiracy theorists. No, a lot of these powerful people meet at all these meetings. This is where things are talked about. They used to be extremely secretive. Now they're a little bit more out and open because they've been exposed so long that now, people follow and know where they're going to be, and, it's all put together. There's some, people from the inside that eventually kind of leaked a lot of the information. Look from We Are Change got an exclusive interview with the youngest Bilderberg attendee ever. And I wanted to play this. And we'll get into that. And then we do need to dive into some more news here. We'll get to all that after this clip here.
Bilderbergers respond, and how does it work with their world domination plan?
He
confirmed it. That's it. It's official.
Yeah.
All right. In a very strange turn of many different events, this is Luke Radowski of WeAreChange.org. I am joined today by the one and only Boyan Slat, an amazing individual, a very creative individual. He's an inventor, an entrepreneur, does a lot of great things. But the first time I met you, Boyan, we met under very different circumstances. We met at the airport.
How are you? My name is Luke Radowski of WeAreChange. I like the dress down. It's my kind of style. Is there anything specific you'd like to address or hear about at this year's meeting? It's not safe to text and walk. Can go. I appreciate your dress and the other Bilderberg members. I'm more casual myself. If we could get one comment and end all the conspiracy theories out there, that would be really great.
When you're arriving at the 2017 Bilderberg meeting.
Yes.
Of course, there's going to be a lot of questions about that. Of course, people are very curious about that. But I think I just wanted to get your perspective on what happened there and what you were told and just what's going on.
Yeah. So my reason for being there was really in the interest of my project, my mission to rid the oceans of plastic. Of course, we all know these people are very influential. They have a great network, wealth, etc. We of course need a network and funding to clean the ocean. So so of course there were sort of certain upsides and downsides to being there. The downsides being PR risk, the upside being meeting these people. So I received an invitation a few weeks ago, and decided to make use of the opportunity to introduce these people to my work of cleaning the ocean. So I think the conference, of course, after I received the invitation, I Googled about it, read a lot of stuff. I think
What was your impression?
Yeah, I think you would be quite disappointed if you really think it's sort of a conspiracy, New World Order kind of thing. It felt like many other meetings. It was just a group of people talking, long days, discussing topics, and I really, I didn't see any weird stuff, I would say, but maybe it's sort of my hypothesis is that they like to keep the sort of the secrecy around it, also just as a PR tool themselves. But anyway, so that was I think for me, the useful things were, of course, the cocktail reception things, the having the drinks, etc. But other than that, it was just talking, listening sessions, that kind of thing.
Could you explain just some of the rules, some of the Chatham House rules that they had you abide by?
Yeah. So their explanation for it is that they want to foster open conversations, and they say it's if you have to worry about things ending up in the press, you don't really talk openly about stuff. So the Chatham House rule is that basically you are able to use the information that's being shared, but you aren't allowed to disclose who said it and sort of the context. So that was as far as I know the only limitation I received before going there.
And they told you not to speak about
what?
About what happened in the meeting.
Really just Chatham House rule. Yeah.
That's why there's kind of this interest from other people, because it's like, people are saying it's nothing. Sometimes members come out, say that they made these decisions, sure. And that there's a lot of trust, especially when we're dealing. But I could understand, especially as a first-time attendee, not wanting to anger CIA directors and military-industrial complex heads and all these other powerful people. So I totally understand your concern, and I won't push any further to kind of give us more details.
Well, I mean, again, my only interest there was to, because I thought it was in the interest of the ocean cleanup to be there. It's not every day you get an opportunity to present a very important technological, environmental cause to these people. So I thought it was in the interest of the oceans, really, that I was there. And that's what we do.
Because kind of looking from the outside, you see the kind of organizations involved, like Goldman Sachs, like Bayer and Monsanto, and you can kind of see that their record is not always that they had the best interest at heart, but their interest of the environment and the people is not always there. But I think what you're doing is important. I think you've had tremendous success early on in your life. I think what you're doing is very noble. And I think it'll be interesting to kind of give us your story of the decision that made you go there and your mission.
Sure. Yeah. So at the Ocean Cleanup, we develop advanced technologies to rid the oceans of plastic. So every year, millions of tons of plastic enter the oceans. Actually, we published a study today showing it's about 2 million tons of plastic flowing out of rivers each year, and it's accumulating in 5 areas in the world called ocean garbage patches. The most famous one being the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is between Hawaii and California.
Some of them are islands, just full of plastic out there in the ocean.
Yeah, I think sort of the term island is a bit of a hyperbole. It's more of a dispersed accumulation zone, as it were. So even though the surface area is massive, so we're talking about say twice the size of Texas for the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. It's not like you can walk on it. It's you're talking about a few hundred kilos every square kilometer, which is it's a crazy amount. It's about 10,000 times more than naturally occurring sea life, and of course it's doing all these problems in terms of economic damage, health impact entering in the fish we eat, and also in terms of the environment, 200 species being threatened by it. So so it's a big problem, and on one side we need to make sure no more plastic enters the ocean. On the other side we need to clean up what's already out there. And that's where my starting point was. I was 16 years old. I was diving in Greece, saw more plastic bags than fish, and I thought, well, why don't we clean this up? And I quickly realized that the ocean is quite big, and it would take a lot of time with boats and nets to actually clean it up. Tens of thousands of years, actually. And actually, this plastic moves around, so it doesn't stay in one spot. So I thought, well, why go through the ocean if the ocean can also go through you? So what I invented is a passive system, which is comprised out of sort of a fleet of very long floating barriers in a U shape, which float around, and instead of going after the plastic, they intercept the plastic as it travels through the ocean. The thing is that the deeper you go in the ocean, the slower the current gets. So what we do is we attach a sort of a large service area, sort of a large drogue, a large anchor, at a depth of about 600 meters, which creates enough drag for the system to be slowed down just enough so that the system moves slower than the plastic and therefore collects the plastic. And we now have been able to show that with a fleet of such systems, we can clean up this Great Pacific Garbage Patch, or half of it, in just 5 years' time. So it all started, very much, as a high school science project with 300 euros of pocket money. But then it sort of went viral thanks to the power of the internet a few years ago. Was being shared millions of times, and that then allowed me to raise the initial capital through crowdfunding. So we raised $2.2 million with crowdfunding, and now we just raised an additional 21 million to actually build the first system. So over the past 2 years, we've done the reconnaissance of the patch. So we crossed it with 30 boats at the same time. We crossed it with an airplane. We've done the scale model testing. We've deployed a prototype. We've done the scale model testing. We've deployed a prototype on the North Sea, and now we're ready to really do the first one, which is expected to be deployed from San Francisco early next year.
I think this is the most fascinating part. When you have an idea now, because of the internet, unlike before, you could finally take off.
Yes.
And I know Theo saw it and also decided to sponsor this. I know other people are sponsoring this, and now it's a multi-million-dollar organization that's going to be helping up, doing something positive for the environment and having positive for the people, which I find fascinating. How quickly something could spread, and now this is your main thing, and you're only 22.
Yes. So I think when I was born in 1994, and if somebody would have launched the project in 94, this thing wouldn't be able to exist. Without crowdfunding, we wouldn't have any capital. Without social media, this people wouldn't know about this because at first, especially first few years, it wasn't the media reporting on this. It was just blogs and it being spread out through the internet organically. And thirdly, without things like video conferencing, initially, this team was sort of all volunteers, all spread out over the world. And we wouldn't have been able to work together without stuff like Skype. So, so really without internet, I think the Ocean Cleanup is really a product of the times, a product of the internet.
I find the project very fascinating and very noble, what you're trying to do. But it's also a way to raise funds and to continue the operation later on. Can you tell us about how you guys will be processing the plastic, your future goals, your future assessments, and how this will play out in the long run?
Yeah. So I think for this to work on the long term, there needs to be some revenue stream, right? Because it can't be it can't just receive donations all the time. So you don't want to be sort of a bottomless pit where people have to throw money and it will need money forever. So in terms of initial investments, the plan is to partner with companies, partner with individuals, them being able to sort of buy their own ocean cleanup system, sort of as from marketing budgets, to at least get them out there, to get the capital investment out of the way. But then in terms of operational costs, the plan is actually recycle the plastic and then bring that back on the market at a premium, so that people can say, well, my sunglasses are made out of ocean plastic.
Yeah, and those are the sunglasses that are.
So this is actually my pair of sunglasses that we already made sort of as a test from ocean plastic. And you can imagine sort of the bumper of your next car or your dashboard or your chair or your laptop or anything being made out of ocean plastic in the future. So that's how we foresee being self-sustainable on the long term.
Okay, silly question. How did the Bilderbergers respond, and how does it work with their world domination plan? We confirmed it. That's it. It's official.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't really see any of that stuff going on.
I just mean, how did they respond to your project?
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Okay. So, of course, I try to meet as many people as possible there, sort of networking, and I think there are certainly a few that I think will want to get involved. Of course, I was very much the odd one out, right? It was just I think it's a group of predominantly sort of middle-aged white men, that all know each other. So it was kind of an interesting exercise to network there. I think I made a few good relations, and it's too early to say whether something actually is going to come out of it, but it was certainly the right level of people, and it's certainly 1,000 times better to have people like this support you than having them against you or something. So so I think, and of course it's not, these are not all bad people. They're wealthy and powerful, but if we use that wealth and power in a good way, I think it can actually help causes like mine of cleaning the ocean. It's just about funneling it to the right things.
Mm-hmm. And I find it fascinating that you were there. I find your story just in general, from doing something as a teenager and now actually making a big impact because of the internet, because of your idea, fascinating in itself. So you definitely have a very rising career, a lot of great things ahead of you. Leaving you with the last word here, and what you hope for the future and for yourself and for the world.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think somebody has to do this, right? When I started, nobody else did it, so I thought I should do this. So I don't think it's a very noble thing. It's just something we as a society have to solve. But in general, I think to solve the problems of these days, it's really about converting a civilization that we created in the last century into one that will still be around in the next century. That's very loud.
It's okay. The mics are professional.
Okay,
mics, and
wonderful. So I think to solve these problems, I think it's a lot more about, or it's a lot less about sort of trying to fight against the things that we don't agree with. It's much more about supporting the things that we do agree with, and making that grow. I think eventually it's an arms race between good technologies and bad technologies. Take for example energy. There are incredibly bright people working on how to make hydraulic fracturing and hydrocarbon extraction even cheaper, even more efficient. And on the other side, there are people working on making solar energy, wind energy cheaper, more efficient. I think eventually the side where most smart people are working on is the side that will win. And so I think it's a responsibility of the smart people in the world, of the engineers, of the scientists, to work on the things that are right. So I think activism in this century won't be a classic sort of protesting, marches, that kind of thing that we saw a lot in the past few decades. I think it will be more entrepreneurship. It's not about fighting that you don't agree with, but actually creating what you want to see the world to be. And I hope the Ocean Clip can be a symbol for that. That we use technology to solve a big society problem.
Thank you so much for the on the record and off the record meeting we had. I really appreciate it. Thank you for wanting to have a dialogue. I think what you're doing is fascinating, and I wish you the best of luck with it. The link to Boyan's website will be in the description below. Definitely check him out. Definitely up and coming. I'm really interested to see the project take off, and hopefully I'll be there too when the first ship sails.
Yeah, definitely.
We Are Change, wearechange.org, We Are Change on YouTube. Check them out. Subscribe. Now, you know, when you think of Bilderberg, you do definitely think of the military-industrial complex, world bankers, but again, you also have a lot of the heads of a lot of tech companies and things like that too that might be interested in things like this. So who could blame them for attending? Now, there's a lot of people that are going to look at this and go, that's just money I got to spend. Military-industrial complex probably not really going to see that as their go-to project to get involved in. So, we'll see if he actually gets anything out of that. But his ideas and things like that are pretty well thought out. I'm someone that I'm an outdoors person. I don't believe in, this whole big climate thing and, Americans got to do all this work to get their, shit together and blah, blah, blah. Why, a lot of these companies and the people that, are pushing this, investing heavily in this, they're also involved in the countries that pollute heavily and don't really care if they go along with it. Something that we should look at. And, what a lot of people here in America are kind of unaware of too is a lot of these car makers make a lot of other vehicles, trucks, SUVs, that you can buy in other countries. But because of emission controls, they don't sell them here because, that they threw that one in their lineup wouldn't pass the emissions control. So we got to put a whole bunch of energy, savers in our lineup. So then, I don't know if they want to try to make us more like Europe where the majority of people drive these little tiny cars while only the rich and important people, get bigger vehicles. All the everyday person could afford would be like a little Fiat or, a Cavalier. Or they're not even Cavaliers anymore. I don't even know if they're called. No, what are they? I forget. Veo or whatever. And they got a few other ones. Cruise would be your big car. I don't know all the names anymore. Lineups have changed over the past few years here. But that doesn't mean that I'm not for the environment. I get mad when I drive down the road and there's just plastic bags everywhere. I tend to try to reuse my plastic bags as much as possible. I could do more, but again, convenience always plays a part in it. And, if the markets still have paper bags, that would, gladly take the paper. But what do you get when you get in the checkout? You get plastic bags. That's what you get. Now, I know that there's a little more environmental plastic coming out that, after time it actually does break down. And just little things like that are what we really need to focus on, is just making it more friendly. But you also can't force people to buy things that don't do what they need. Don't tell me I need a Fiat, little tiny smart car looking, thing if I'm a farmer. It's not going to work. Talking to a few people that, need trucks, or, a couple that wanted a truck because they need a truck. And they're going, it's really getting hard to get a truck anymore because of the whole, environmental movement. You need a truck to move and haul things that are heavy. You're not going to pull the, Bobcat with a little Fiat. It's just not happening. But at the same time, with the economy where it's at, these people are going, almost a house payment, if not a house payment, in debt just to get the truck. One guy I know, he needs to upgrade his truck. It's just so high mileage and it's breaking down more and more. But he doesn't make enough money to be able to afford a new truck payment. And a lot of the trucks he's looking at already got 250,000 miles on them. And they're still, right on the edge of his price range. It's getting hard out there for people, but again, I'm still hopeful. I think the American people will figure it out. Definitely the generation in there, I probably go late 20s, early 30s to, their 50s, I think is one of the generations that they're the ones really putting in a lot of hard work. Not saying that the younger generation isn't. A lot of them are very technical. They're good at, getting the apps to work and, inventing things where it could be beneficial or fun or, both. But at the end of the day, stuff still has to be built. That AC that's keeping you cool while you're coming up with that app needs to be fixed when it breaks down. That building you're in still needs to be able to be built. And all that's got to be able to work with what you want. So in those fields, they're also getting technical. The builders can build you a smart home. They can wire everything up for you. And I hope more people start getting, more involved in the manufacturing, the building of things. There's a lot of people that go, America's done with that. We're done with that. We're going to go to technical economy. Everything's going to be digital. I said it's not going to be possible. It just won't. You'll be put in a checkmate. You can't go complete technical. You have to be able to feed yourself. You have to be able to build for yourself. Because otherwise, you become dependent on other countries. And history has shown us you never know when turmoil can hit another country. Again, people are individuals. You might think you'll get one result after doing something, you might get the other. And a lot of these companies are already starting to deal with that. Things that okay for them to do here, they kind of looked at the law and it was kind of broad and thought they could get away with it over in those other countries, and now they're having to deal with consequences from it. Now, I want to get to the last half hour something that I've called a witch hunt already. I was saying it before the president was calling it a witch hunt. Something I believe is a witch hunt for the simple fact that with all the leaks coming out, if there was actually evidence of something, it would have been exposed. Listen, if they could have impeached or drawn up charges or, leaked something that just devastated the president, it would have happened by now. So it seems what their little witch hunt is to do is we'll leak. We can start an investigation. We can investigate whatever the hell we want, whether there be any truth to it or not. So all we have to do is open an investigation and then leak that. As long as there's why you think Comey didn't come out? One point that was made in one of those clips was, yeah, you could see the president going, am I, this target of this investigation, Mr. Comey? No, you're not being investigated. Why the hell are you leaking that to the press? Why is everything about there being an investigation, this Russia connection, but you're not going, but the president's not a target of that investigation? You're not saying that. You won't come out and say that. What the hell's going on? Why won't you say that, but you'll let everything else leak out? If you're not leaking it, there's leaks going out. Why don't you, bring that up? So yeah, you could see the president doing that. I have an article here. This one's out of CNN. Robert Mueller expands special counsel office, hires 13 lawyers. Says here, special counsel Robert Mueller, and special counsels are very dangerous. I just want to point that out. He says has brought 13 lawyers on board to handle the Russian investigation with plans to hire more, according to his spokesman, Peter Carr. Mueller has assembled a high-powered team of top investigators and leading experts, including seasoned attorneys who represented major American companies in court and who have worked on cases ranging from Watergate to Enron fraud scandal. Among them are James Kors and Jeannie Ray, both of whom Mueller brought over from his old firm, Wilmer Hall. He's also hired Andrew Wiseman, who led the Enron investigation. That is a great team of complete professionals, so let's let him do his job. Former independent counsel Kenneth Starr, who investigated President Bill Clinton in 1990s, told ABC News. While only 5 attorneys had been identified, concerns have come up over the political leanings of Kors, Ray, and Wiseman. They have donated overwhelmingly to Democrats, totaling more than $53,000 since 1988, according to CNN analysis of Federal Elections Commission records. The special counsel's investigators are looking into questions of Russian interference in last year's election and plan to speak to senior intelligence officials A source familiar with the matter told CNN. Mueller is also investigating whether President Donald Trump attempted to obstruct justice, the Washington Post reported Wednesday. The Post reported that the interviews represent a widening of the probe to include looking into whether the president obstructed justice in the suggestion to his former FBI director, James Comey, that Comey dropped the investigation into Michael Flynn, Trump's former national security advisor, as well as his firing of Comey. Mueller's investigators have asked for information and will talk to Director of National Intelligence Dan Coats and National Security Agency Director Administrator Mike Rogers. According to a source who said they have also sought information from recently retired NSA Deputy Director Richard Legit, Coates and Rogers had testified that they were not pressured by the Trump administration. The interviews are some of the first indications of the efforts of Mueller's newly assembled team. Ultimately, it would be up to Mueller to decide whether there is enough evidence to recommend pursuing charges on any part of the investigation. Law enforcement sources tell CNN that the special counsel is gathering information considering whether there is evidence to launch a full-scale obstruction investigation. And then I have an article here. And this kind of talks about one of the things that I was talking about, the leaks. Trump allies on the offensive against Mueller. President Trump's legal team and political allies have launched a preemptive strike against special counsel Robert Mueller. Trump's backers are furious about a story that appeared Wednesday in the Washington Post. In which 5 anonymous sources alleged that the president is the target of an obstruction of justice investigation for allegedly trying to bury an FBI probe into his former national security advisor, Michael Flynn. The timing of that story, which was published on Trump's birthday and a week after the White House believed the president had moved beyond allegations of collusion with Russia in the presidential election, was viewed by Trump's allies as evidence that the story was planted by law enforcement officials to ensure a shadow of suspicion would remain. It is unclear whether the Post story was leaked by the special counsel, the FBI, former FBI Director James Comey, and his allies, or witnesses that have been contacted by those law enforcement agencies as part of the investigation. Many legal experts suspect the leaks didn't come from the special counsel or from current or former FBI officials, but rather from those who have been reached for questioning as part of the probe, or their staffers. The special counsel's office has undertaken stringent controls to prohibit unauthorized disclosures that deal severely with any member who engages in this conduct, Mueller's spokesman Peter Carr told The Hill. That hasn't been enough to stop a barrage of attacks against special counsel and Mueller, the lead investigator who otherwise enjoys the confidence of lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. Trump has chimed in on Twitter saying Wednesday that conflicted people are running the single greatest witch hunt in American political history. Aside from Trump's tweets, though, the White House is taking a backseat in the offensive referring all questions about the special counsel to the presidential's outside lawyers. Instead, Trump's legal team, the Republican National Committee, conservative heavyweights, and right-wing media are picking up the slack, launching a tandem effort to cast the special counsel as hopelessly corrupt. This is the most coordinated communications effort on behalf of the president that we've seen in a long time, said Barry Bennett, a former advisor to Trump. They need it. It's tough to fight nameless, baseless quotes from people purposely twisting these stories on you. Trump's lead outside counsel, Mark Kasowitz, responded to the Post story by decrying the legal leaks, which he said had come directly from the FBI. Jay Sekulow, a new member of Trump's legal team, went on Fox News to say that the leaks may have come from inside Mueller's special counsel. Sekulow asked why I'm probably butchering his name, asked why the FBI is not sending agents to people's houses to put an end to it. Meanwhile, the Republican National Committee, which Chairwoman Ronna Romney McDaniel has described as the political arm of the White House, has led the effort to cast doubt on the special counsel investigation. The RNC's rapid response team sent out a flurry of emails to reporters on Thursday highlighting comments from legal experts who said there is no case for obstruction of justice. They also circulated talking points for surrogates who respond specifically to the Post story. The message, the illegal leaks are the only crime that has been committed, and they came directly from the FBI or the special counsel's office as part of an effort to undermine the president. The RNC says there is no case for obstruction charges, but if any obstruction investigation exists, it's because the special counsel is trying to save face after the collusion probe didn't go anywhere. Sorry, my throat was getting a little dry. Rather than wasting resources on investigating Trump, the GOP says the special counsel must look into whether former Attorney General Loretta Lynch meddled with the FBI's criminal investigation into former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's use of private email server. Comey testified that Lynch told him to downplay the seriousness of the FBI's email server investigation and to refer to it as a matter, language that aligned with Clinton's presidential campaign. Those GOP talking points have been picked up by the right-wing pundits like Fox News, News' Sean Hannity, and former Speaker Newt Gingrich, who have both called for an end to the special counsel investigation. Gingrich accused Mueller of stocking his team with Democratic political donors and took to Twitter to call him the tip of the deep state sphere. Mueller and Comey are best friends, Hannity said, and viewers should not believe the stories they leak to the news media. These special counsels have a way of going off the rails, Representative Trent Franks told The Hill, and the ostensible purpose of the special counsel has now been essentially vitiated, and everybody knows that, and so they've got to try to find something to do. In this case, it was almost an intent from the beginning to try to create something out of nothing, and it doesn't work in physics, but in politics it seems to be pretty effective. Legal experts are alarmed by the leaks. Leaks by any investigation are deplorable and raise questions as to whether there is an agenda. Former Attorney General Bill Barr told The Hill. but most doubt the leaks are illegal. Rather, Trump's critics are accusing the administration's allies of muddying the waters in an effort to tarnish the special counsel's investigation. In a series of tweets, Joyce White Vance, who worked as a U.S. attorney in the Obama administration, said, "Not every piece of information that comes to light during an investigation is a leak. Witnesses, even those subpoenaed by the grand jury, can talk about being summoned and even the substance of their testimony," she said. This is one of the most common ways news of the existence of an investigation becomes public. Leaks are harmful and often illegal, but don't confuse lawful disclosure with illegal leaking. Trump's allies are undertaking a risky strategy by attacking Mueller 1 year into an FBI investigation, said Bill Jeffries, a prominent Washington criminal lawyer who was on the defense team for I. Lewis Scooter Libby leak case during the George W. Bush administration. There is no question these leaks give ammunition to critics to question the credibility and nonpartisan nature of the special counsel, Jeffrey said. But I do wonder why they've adopted this strategy of attacking Mueller, who I know to be a straight shooter. He's made no findings, and if they're confident he's going to clear Trump in all of this, I think it'd be better just push him to bring a speedy end to it all. And then, I don't know if I have time for this whole one, but one from Fox News. Rosenstein warns Americans to exercise caution about anonymous reports. I'll try to read this as fast as I can here. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein said Thursday evening that Americans should exercise caution before believing anonymously sourced reports in apparent reference to ongoing leaks surrounding the investigation into alleged connections between Russian officials and President Trump's campaign. Americans should exercise caution before accepting as true any stories attributed to anonymous officials. Rosenstein said in a statement, particularly when they do not identify the country, let alone the branch or agency of the government with which alleged sources supposedly are affiliated. Though Rosenstein's statement did not reference the Russian investigation specifically, it was released hours after Washington Post reported that Special Counsel Robert Mueller is investigating Jared Kushner, Trump's senior advisor and son-in-law, over his finances and business dealings. White House senior advisor Jared Kushner says here, Peter Carr, a spokesman for Mueller, did not comment on the Post report when reached by Fox News, but did say that the special counsel's office has undertaken stringent controls to prohibit unauthorized disclosures that deal severely with any member who engages in this conduct. Trump and his supporters have repeatedly complained about leaked reports about the progress of Mueller's investigation, many of which have appeared in either the Post or the New York Times. On Wednesday, the Post reported that Mueller was examining whether Trump has tried to obstruct justice and was seeking interviews with three administration officials, Dan Coates, Michael Rogers, and Richard Leggett. Mark Corallo, a spokesman for Trump's personal lawyer, responded Wednesday evening to the Post report by saying the FBI leak of information regarding the president is outrageous, inexcusable, and illegal. The Post report cited anonymous sources who were briefed on requests made by investigators it was not immediately clear whether the FBI was the source of the information. The president himself took to Twitter Wednesday morning to complain about the phony story in the post, and then did so again in the afternoon, questioning why Hillary Clinton's conduct during the probe of her private email server was not under more scrutiny. Rosenstein, who appointed Mueller special counsel to the Russian investigation last month, testified to lawmakers Tuesday that he has seen no evidence of good cause to fire Mueller, and that he is confident that Mueller will have the full independence he needs to investigate thoroughly. That was from Fox News. And now, again, all these leaks coming out from every little crevice, with the left biting down to try to, take down the president. We know the left is doing that with most of the mainstream media, minus a couple conservative outlets. If there was evidence, it would have been dug up. Believe me, it would have been dug up. They keep suggesting without any evidence. And that's where the whole witch hunt, like, by now we would have had evidence just being thrown out there, and the president would be getting impeached probably right now. But all they have to do is get him out after 4 years. And if they can distract, they will do it. But right now, there's polls out showing that Trump's sitting at a 50% approval rating, which might not be, 80%, but come on, 50%. They might be playing a dangerous game if he gets reelected. And of course, all this time, we're sitting here and we will have to deal with the repercussions. This can make a very angry second-term president if they keep this up without any evidence. If they believe that something illegal is going on, if they want to investigate it, they shouldn't be leaking anything. Don't give him a position where, if there isn't any evidence, that he comes out victorious and revengeful. And again, that goes back to, allowing laws to be passed to punish those that have done wrong, but the laws are written in a way that takes away from, yours and mine when it comes to our rights. And we've already basically had that, you heard Rand Paul talk about the whole indefinite detention. We got to start reversing that. Take care.